Alright, so the question here I'm discussing is question number 6 of homework 4. So this is one of the relatively poorly done questions. So let me read the setup quickly. Consider the market for avocados illustrated in the figure to the right. Use the supply and demand diagrams to illustrate the effect of the following possible shocks on the U.S. avocado market. So the first scenario is a new study shows significant health benefits from eating avocados. And this obviously refers to a demand shock because if the hair study result is true, so more people probably will choose to eat avocados, and that will increase the demand for this product. And the instruction says using the line drawing tool, graph a new avocado demand curve, label this curve D2. So as I said, this is the demand shock, and since this shock increases demand, so the demand curve should shift to the right. So let me draw this curve here and click on the line tool first, and then since it's the demand shock, so this is gonna move the demand curve and point here first, the first point, and then the second point. As I said in one of my announcements, I believe the Econ Lab actually designed the graphing tool well. In this case, you don't have to draw parallel lines as long as the demand curve shifts to the right. My Econ Lab will mark your answer as right. So that's the new demand curve. You can see here that it is not parallel to the original one. Seems that it's not moving as expected, probably because of my browser. Okay, so and this is my D2, so I choose D2. And number 2, using the point drawing tool, indicate the new market equilibrium price and quantity. Label this point E2. So now I'm using the point drawing tool, and point to the new intersection between the demand curve and the supply curve, and supply curve doesn't move, so the new equilibrium is right here. So that's my E2, and now I believe that's done for this part, and let's check the answer. Nice work. So continue. I believe many students are confused about. I think the biggest hurdle to solve questions in this chapter is to understand what causes a demand shock and in which direction, and what causes a supply shock and in which direction. So I believe that probably is the number one reason that many of our students do a very good job for the quiz on this chapter. So the second scenario is trade barriers that restricted avocado imports from Mexico are eliminated. So again, let's first using the line drawing tool to draw the new supply curve. Well, actually here it gives you the hint it's a supply shock, right? So you even don't have to think about whether this is a supply or demand shock, but for some questions you do have to determine whether this is a supply or demand shock. So here trade barriers have been eliminated, so that will likely increase the supply, so that will shift the supply curve to the right. Hence, the new supply curve, it should be, let's draw a point here first. My first point, and since I said we don't have to draw parallel lines, so let me just draw this just for illustration purpose. And you can see that we can actually do a quite flexible job. So this is a new supply curve S2, and the new equilibrium point is the intersection between the new supply curve and the original demand curve, because there's no demand shock. So actually, you can see this is not precise. I just move my cursor around the intersection, and that's another strength of my econ lab, which doesn't require very precise pointing. So let me check my answer here. That's the new equilibrium. So the supply shock decreases the price as expected and increases the quantity also as expected. So now the third scenario. A recession causes a decline in per capita income. So if the per capita income decreases, consumers now have less money to buy goods, hence their demand for the good will decrease. So this is a demand shock, and it's a negative demand shock, hence we should expect the demand curve to shift to the left. So with the new line drawing tool, I'm drawing this line here. First point, that's the new demand curve. And then the second point, again, I'm drawing a very liberal, very flexible new demand curve, D2. And the new equilibrium is right here. Speed is a little bit slow. I believe this is because I turned my recording device, so that slowed the speed a little bit. So that's my E2, the new equilibrium. And then let me check my answer again. So again, as expected, with the new demand curve, since the negative demand shock, so the price decreases and the quantity also decreases. Right? So after you have done a question, think about the intuition behind it. I believe that's the most important part. Don't rely on graphing and even mathematics all the time. For a new question, try to form your own perceptions or your own intuition. Have that first, and then use the tool to verify whether your intuition is correct or incorrect. So do we have another scenario? I believe so. Genetically modified avocado plants that allow for much greater output or yield without increasing cost are introduced to the market. So obviously this is a supply shock because with this new technology, genetically modified technology, we can produce more avocado with the same cost. So that's a supply shock, and it's a positive supply shock. So we should expect the supply curve to shift to the right. So now let me draw the new supply curve and S2. And the new equilibrium, click on the point, drawing tool, new equilibrium right here. And you can see it's not very precise, but it's okay. As now it's very close to the intersection, my econ lab will mark your answer as right. So E2, so check my answer. Again, after you have done the question, think about the intuition behind it. This is a positive supply shock. So if the supply increases, what should we expect for the price? Obviously, the price should decrease and the quantity should increase, and that's exactly what happened here. Compared with E2 or E1, E2 has a lower price but higher quantity, and that's a supply shock. I believe that's done for this question. I hope by using this video recording, I can help you to better understand how to do a supply and demand model and how to draw the graphs better.